I mean, I wasn't perfect, but I tried. but recently, Deidre, did you know that there was a bug in the house? And I have a backstory on bugs.
Okay.
Now, my backstory is a good backstory because I grew up with bugs, but not purposely. What happened was in the house I grew up with, our dad was so cheap, Pastor Beeson, was so cheap that he didn't spray for bugs in our house. So there was roach manifestation.
Oh my goodness.
I would sleep at nighttime and sometimes I'd feel the bugs on my feet. It was terrible.
Oh my God.
It was like hell. It was terrible. So I'm going to fast forward to 35, 40 years later. There was a bug and the kids were freaking out.
No, Deidre, this was like not just a bug. It was one of those huge outside flying roaches. It was huge.
Flying roach.
My dad said those are demons, but I don't care what they are. I don't want them in my house.
Because Samuel came and he's like, help, roach. And I was like, just kill it. He goes, it's huge.
Oh my God.
Like, I haven't seen a roach in here in forever. So when he said it was huge, I was like, look. And when I went out there, it was huge.
Deidre, I mean, it was fat.
Well, the problem was I was working, right? I'm working and I have things to do.
Right.
Someone's over here fiddling with the computer.
No. How's she going to call this fiddling?
And doing stuff.
This is real work stuff. She don't understand.
Yeah,
you see what happens?
That ain't buying groceries.
I know it ain't buying groceries. You got to start somewhere. Listen, I'm starting. What are you doing? What are you starting? I mean, I know you're working and you're hard.
I asked someone who was working diligently on nothing.
Okay.
To help me to get the bug because I was focused on what I was doing.
Deidre, I'm petrified of roaches. Look at my face. Just even talking about them, I get.
But how are you petrified when you grew up with them?
My tummy hurts just thinking about them. Like when I think about a roach, I'm like I get scared.
But I don't understand how you can be petrified when you grew up with them in the house.
Well, I didn't grow up with them purposely. I mean, if I had a choice to get out of the house.
I know it wasn't purposely, but.
Deidre.
Right, you have to kill a few in your life because they're right there. You live in Florida.
You don't understand. I'm scared. Just talking about it now, I'm scared. Look at it. She thinks I'm a big black guy having muscles. She called me a bad word because I wouldn't kill the roach, and I'm offended that she did that. And then we got in a big fight and she threw the paper on the ground.
No. See, he ain't even telling the story right.
Oversimplifying it.
Right, yes.
Oh, man.
So I sat there and I asked him nicely 3 times to please get it because I'm focusing and I'm trying to get this stuff done.
Oh, my God.
He's like, I'm not killing the roach. Now, if you don't kill a roach or you don't spray the roach, where the roach going to end up? When you sleeping in your bed,
it's not
on the wall,
because
that roach crawls everywhere.
She thought it was going to end up in her mouth. I said, Natalie, that's ridiculous. The roach ain't going to end up in your mouth. What are you talking about?
Yes, your ear, your
eye. Oh, come on.
Any orifice it gets by.
Oh, my God.
That's why I sleep with underwear. I'll never not sleep with no underwear. I was telling Ian, man, I'm afraid of something. You never know, something might crawl up there. I don't know.
Oh, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Hey, that's my paranoia.
Oh, my God.
Even if you are scared of a roach, you are the man of the house. Even scared, you don't show fear and you go and kill the roach.
Deidre.
Exactly, but no, this has been a problem for a long time, right?
I've lost.
Do you know? He told me once. I said, my dad used to kill roaches with his bare foot. My dad would. My dad's an old Jamaican man. He would just step on it.
I'm not your dad.
I'm not your dad.
That's right. I'm not your dad.
So it's like for me to look, and then he won't even pick up the roach.
What? I did pick up the roach.
I'm on Natalie's side on this.
I ended up picking up the roach. I did after much debate with Samuel because he would.
After it was dead?
Yeah,
yes.
After I had to get up.
Yeah, she killed it.
See, and what happened was when I got up.
Actually, no,
he was sitting there looking down on with a notepad, and I hit the notepad off of his lap
Deidre,
because I was so annoyed.
Deidre, let me show you what she did. Deidre, I had it in my hand, and she goes, you ain't doing nothing. Whack! And just whacked it on the floor. And then
because that was my frustration.
Deidre,
because he, in that moment, was not willing to sacrifice his
do you hear her voice?
To help me.
Do you hear her voice here? This is what we went through.
We've been arguing for days after. We haven't even made up yet.
This is just recently.
We're still.
That's where the tension is.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I'm on Natalie's side on this, and let me just give you all a little short story before we segue into another topic.
In this episode, we invited our guest and my childhood friend Lauren to the Family Mess podcast. We chose to invite her because of the current situation in the country. The George Floyd video was revealed to the nation and it sparked the largest civil rights movement in the world. Lauren brings her perspective as a teacher who saw the difference in the treatment of Black and Spanish children from their white counterparts. She noticed this and knew it wasn't fair or right. Teaching in South Central Los Angeles for over 10 years gives her an in-depth perspective on how racist policies and programs affected minority children. This episode is powerful and probably the most profound to date.
But Ian grew up relatively poor. He talks about roaches, that's why he hates roaches, because they had so many in his house and stuff. But we both were given that education here. And now we have been able to lift up ourselves a level. You know, I got out of college making more than double what my parents were making, you know.
Yeah.
But it was because of that education that I was afforded and a mind shift that also I was exposed to by that education that enabled me to uplift. And a lot of kids can't. You know, a lot of kids aren't able to lift out of that thing, you know, as far as how they're born and what education that they are provided. And, you know, I know for you being in, the education, you see that like a lot. Like, can you expound upon that some?
Yeah. I mean, when I first started teaching, and like I said, I'm going to say this over and over again, like I am on a journey. Like I am not perfect. I actually remember when I first started teaching, I taught, you know, in Central Los Angeles, I had Black and Hispanic students. And one of my students was like, he said, he was one of those students that, like, was always around. He hung out with me before school and at lunch and after school. But when he was in my classroom, it was like chaos. And every day I would greet him at the door and I would say, you know, whatever happened yesterday, that's done. That happened yesterday. Today is a new day. It's going to be a great day. And then he's like, all right, miss. And then it was like chaos in the classroom, just like throwing books and stuff. And, you know, he was always getting in trouble because he was loud and he was, you know, always making jokes and always standing up. And he goes, you know, miss, you're racist. And I was like, what? No, I'm not. And of course, that was my first reaction. Then he was like, you know, why am I always the one getting in trouble? And it really like woke me up to this idea that like, you know, I don't think I'm racist, but my behavior says that I am, because I do always get, you know, him in trouble. And maybe it's not, you know, yes, we need to learn. And like, yes, I need him to be quiet when I'm talking. And yes, I need him to sit in a seat, but I wasn't teaching in a way that was like respectful and responsive to his needs. And that is part of racism, is that like most teachers, a lot of teachers are white. And you know, when white teachers teach Black kids or white teachers teach Latino kids, and they don't have training on how to be respectful and how to integrate the culture of the students that they teach into their classroom, that bias then is imposed on kids. So it's just, you know, there's so much, it's so complex because you've got so many inequities. And then even if you have great teachers in classrooms, they have biases that are impacting kids that can hold them back.
Mm-hmm. Natalie and I had a couple. I used to believe that if you could give kids a good education, they could overcome their circumstances. And I think that is still true to an extent.
Right, to an extent, yeah.
Yeah, doing that, is really, really complex. It's not just like, let's put good teachers in the classroom because the system is broken. And then B, this, you know, education lives within this broken system of our world and our society that is racist. So, you know, looking at there, like, you know, people who, I'm trying to think of the word that I'm trying to think. I can't think of the word. But, you know, you would get like, I think the Christian Cooper example is good, right? The guy who's bird watching. Like I think he went to Harvard and he like was a writer for Marvel Comics. Like this is a highly educated Black man and still he was treated this way, right?
Yeah.
So like education isn't the only thing. It is a huge part of it, but it isn't the only thing. One, and B, it is so complex what is going on in our education system that creates inequities for Black children. And nobody is really looking at them. Like,
yeah. I have our son
in our community.
Yeah, and our son is ADHD, and we were taking him to a therapist. There was this white lady therapist that we were taking him to when he was, I think around 5 or 6 years old, because we were doing neurofeedback and some stuff. So she was the person who does that in the area, and you know, she said to me, Natalie, I want to tell you this. She said, you need to make sure that you advocate for your child. Because your child is a little Black boy and he will be treated, you know, differently or more harshly than the other children. And, you know, and for me, I mean, I knew this, but for me coming from her as a therapist who talks to, you know, hundreds of kids, probably every month, thousands of kids in her lifetime, for her to sit there and tell me this, I was like, wow, like, you know, you get it because you see it. But, you know, if only more people could see it. But you're sitting here as a white lady telling me that I need to make sure I extra advocate for my child because he will be judged more harshly because of his color. And it's been proven with studies that, you know, kids of color, especially Black and Hispanic children, are disciplined harder than their white counterparts for the same things. I mean, I had my son the other day at school, last school year, he's in 6th grade. You know, he's got the ADHD. We had to put him in private school because public school was not for him. But he had a child.
Oh, this is good.
He had it was a little white girl at school, and he I think took her headphones or something, or I forgot what it was.
She initiated it.
Yes, but no, she called him names.
She called him a name.
No, he called her a whale, and she went home crying.
Yep.
You know, to her mom that this boy did this to her at school. Blah blah. I said this to her, and my son, they were going to suspend or give him in-school suspension.
Oh yeah. But the thing is,
and I had to go.
It's how they did it. They didn't call us. They sent a note.
Yes, they sent a note. Yeah,
that is like normal.
Oh yeah. So, but what happened was
that is normal stuff.
Yeah. So Ian and I went up to the school, hot. Like, okay, because when we asked him what happened, he explained to us. And we were like, well, this doesn't sound right. Yeah. So, and this is the kicker for me. Why? I was like, this is good. Because after he was going to get in school suspension, once they found out the real story that because he thought that they were just, what do they call it? Egging on each other. Like he thought, what's the word they call it? Roasting. He thought that they were roasting each other. He's just having a good old time with the thing because she's saying things to him too.
Back and forth.
So once they found out that she was also saying things to him, now what do you think was the consequence that happened? Nothing. But you was ready to put my kid in school suspension over what he said. But now that she said something too, both of them should have had in school suspension. Right? Yeah. But instead, they dropped the whole thing.
Yeah. Because at first, because we're like, well, if their parents want to go ahead and tell our son to go in school, we want to go and make her go on in-school suspension also. And once we said that, they're like, the principal's like, well, how about we just go ahead and just drop the whole thing? And I'm like, oh, okay, we can do that. But it's amazing that if we didn't get involved, our son would be in school, you know, in suspension for something that really is not, you know, deemed to be suspended.
Right, but the teacher quick to call him out and the whole situation. So and that just goes back to
it's a whole system.
It's a disparity, and people don't realize, and that's why we have to have these conversations, because now when these conversations are had, administrators, teachers can, and people in general, co-workers can now think twice about what their reaction is to something. You know, and that's why I feel like it's so important that people get upset about all these protesters and these rioters and, you know, those Black people are out there always tearing stuff up. But you know what? If we don't, how do we get hurt? How is there change? Yeah. You know, and if you know, I've seen where they highlight over and over again, every time Black people protest, it's because of a police brutality. Not every time, but every time it's over police brutality. Because from back in the day, even when you watch old movies, right? They pull up, boy, and they do all this. That stuff is still here today.
Happened to me.
Yeah. And they have these, you know, they walk around with these biases and they have this fear because, yes, some criminals, you know, are Black people. Yes, some criminals are white people. But this fear that has been perpetuated about Black men, especially, that there are a threat. You know, it just.
But why is that?
I don't know.
Why is there a perception that Black men are a threat? That's the first question you have to ask, is because, and that's a perception that's purposely put out continuously. Yeah. But why is that? Absolutely. You know what I mean? That's if they can start. On this episode of The Family Mess, we invite Ricardo and his wife Mylene into the studio to talk to us about her struggles with ovarian cancer. This was very powerful because it revealed that a lot of us really are thankful to have our lives and to have our health, you know, and to hear her perspective on what she's gone through makes you realize how very important that life is and to love your loved ones and your family at all times.
Take this one first of all. I'll try to be the clown and pick up the pins as you drop them.
Sure. So, of course, the oldest one, she's on her own, so we don't have to worry about taking care of her on a daily basis. For my daughter, the 10-year-old, she's probably the busiest of them all with her activities. So typically in the morning, we'll drop